Meeting will come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll.
Benjamin.
Here.
Baylor.
Here.
Holdman. Kasdorf.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Sardina.
Here.
Starks.
Here.
Is there anyone desiring to be heard? Name, please. 3 minutes.
My name is Kevin Andrews. I live at 12735 West Stark Street. I am, I suppose, chairman of, how do I word this? Let's call it Park and Rec, AKA Events Committee. I would like to kind of save my moment of speaking for when it comes prevalent in your meeting
That's
for the
fine.
budget.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else desiring to be heard? None. Consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in opposition, say nay. Motion passes. Communications, anything other than the department reports?
No.
Committee reports, building board.
Building board met this evening at 5:40 and we approved the sign permit for Newmark located at 12819 West Silver Spring Road. And also an occupancy permit for Horizon Home Builders at 12577 West Custer. End of report.
Thank you. Finance committee?
Finance Committee met just a few minutes ago and we reviewed and approved September invoices of $101,986.37. Move that on to the full board for approval. End of report.
Thank you. Library?
Library Board met Tuesday, October 8th. Numerous items were discussed, including the budget, some technology review, and of course, the everlasting board member search. We reviewed the fiscal policy. It will get approved in November. The library use policy was reviewed and it meets the needs of the village. Programming and policy, communication policies were also reviewed and confirmed. End of report.
Thank you. Community Foundation, we met yesterday. We talked about the results of the golf outing, maintenance of the caboose, and then just some general housekeeping items of the Clark House. End of that report. Community events.
Community events will meet on the 23rd of October, and I'll be happy to report back in November. End of report.
Thank you. Report of the administrator.
I just have one item for you today. Just a reminder to everybody that the November 5th general election is coming up. Tomorrow is the deadline for by mail and online registrations. Absentee balloting in person will start next Tuesday on October 22nd and will run through November 1st. They'll be doing normal business hours 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. The last day to request a by mail ballot is the 31st of October. And polls will be open on election day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. We are expecting a very heavy turnout as we already have 111 absentee ballots issued, which is a little over 10% of the village. And that's not including those that are going to come in person in the next 2 weeks. End of report.
And if I could, at this time, before we get to the next item, make a motion that the unfinished business be moved to the end of the agenda.
And that's so we can have our presenter from Ellers. I'll second that. Motion has been made and seconded to change the format of the agenda. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On opposition, say nay. Motion passes. We'll move to new business at this time. Discussion and possible action on a request to write off utility billing charges for DLG Wisconsin LLC. Utility account number 0100006940-00 for the first and second quarter of 2024.
So this is coming before you today because back in June, the village received a letter of special assessment from a title company for a property that was selling. The village provided them with incomplete information. We provided them with 1 quarter's bill instead of 2 additional quarters that were past due. The property then sold, and the homeowner received a letter from the village, as we were mandated to send out by October 15th, that they had a delinquent amount past due. They felt that they should not be responsible due to the village's mistake, and to not saddle this person with another person's debt. We are looking to just basically waive the cost, eat the cost of the utility bill. It would come out to be about $360, broken up amongst the different utilities and recycling charges. So we're just looking to waive that, so then we can just move forward with the property being at a net zero then going forward.
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in opposition, say nay. Motion passes. Next item, discussion and possible action on alcohol beverage license for White Moon Class C liquor wine only.
So this is the same type of license that the Charlotte Amore came to us with. The White Jamoon had the Class B license that we believed previously covered the wine and the beer. However, it only covered the beer license, so now they are getting the wine license. There is no change to the premise description or anything like that. It's just to let them sell wine under that Class C license.
Were we gonna waive and we're waiving the fees on that?
Correct. That, yeah, there are no fees on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the license for White Jamoon for wine.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
I'd like to just know what the dollar amount is that we're waiving,
It's $100.
$100.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any additional discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On opposition, say nay. Motion passes. Discussion and possible action on a 2024 water rate study and PSC application presented by Ellers.
Is this on? Can you hear me?
We,
Is it on?
yeah, you got it.
Okay. Otherwise, I talk really loud. So I'm Lisa Trebatowski with Ellers. The village engaged with us to do a water rate conventional case. And with that, we do a long range cash flow analysis. So we're presenting both of those combined tonight. So if we want to turn to the next page, we're just going to explain our process and what we do, because a utility is very capital intensive and they have to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You need to keep that equipment up and running. So there's very volatile maintenance expenses with that. So when we look historically, we just don't want to look at 1 year because it could be a high or low operating and maintenance year. And we don't want to judge just on that. So we look 5 years back, then we make future projections on that operating and maintenance, your depreciation, your pilot payment, and then take your capital improvement plan and project out what you need to fund with debt versus cash. And then we show the impact on an average residential user. With the utility, water utility being regulated by the PSC, there's a few window of opportunities to increase rates, and that is a simplified rate increase, which the village is a Class C. So you can do from your last conventional rate case, you can continuously do simplified rate cases if you're eligible, up to a 40% cumulative amount. Again, if you're eligible, and we'll talk more about that later. Otherwise, a conventional rate case you can do at any time, and that is the process that we're going through. With your utility, since you purchase from a wholesaler, you can also do a purchase water adjustment increase. So looking historically at your rate implementation, your last conventional rate case was August of 2022 with a purchase water adjustment in June of 23. You were not eligible with the 2023 PS annual report to do a simplified increase. Looking numerically at your historical rate performance, this There's two methods of doing a revenue requirement that's on a cash basis or a utility basis. Being regulated, we'll focus on the utility basis. But each year you can see down at the bottom when we're comparing what your user rate revenue is generating versus where it should be at. And you can see a lot of negatives there. So continuously, and it varies again, depending on higher operating and maintenance years as you add capital, that benchmark rate of return that the PSC sets changes. So all of those changes help vary what your rate adjustment would be every year. But looking at a test year 2025, we have the operating and maintenance and pilot expense, your depreciation expense, and then that line that says NIRB, that is your net investment rate base, which you could consider your undepreciated assets. And the PSC wants you to earn a rate of return on that, which is currently 6.2%. So you get that dollar amount. Then if you have any other revenues, you can net that out to arrive at your revenue requirement. Currently, your user rate revenue is about 600 or 763,000 versus it needs to be around 943,000, so about a 25% deficiency. Looking historically at your cash, we do set various targets, benchmark of where we want your cash reserves to be. And that target is the orange bars, and where your ending cash is the orange line. So you have been above, but not highly above, where you would be able to maybe consider using cash for some of your capital improvement projects. So we'll be looking to issue debt on those. And then we talked about that rate of return, which is currently at 6.2%. This chart just shows even if you decrease that rate of return, if you saw that decrease, you can see as your operating and maintenance expenses increase, as you're adding assets, even with that lower rate of return, you're still not meeting and you're getting more negative in your net operating income. Looking at future projections, we have this all-in debt coverage that we want to make sure that you're meeting. And that includes your operating and maintenance expenses, all your taxes, your pilot, and your general obligation and revenue debt. And we want to make sure you're maintaining revenues that are X amount, like 1.1 times, where for every dollar of debt, you're earning $1.10 of revenue. So in here, I just want to point out 2026, we're showing you above that minimum amount, barely, and again in 2029. So this would be the conventional rate case currently, and then we're projecting out in 2029 that you would need another one. So without those conventionals, you don't meet that minimum requirement. This page is just a rate comparison where we're looking at Waukesha and Milwaukee counties. You can note that, yes, you're already on the higher end, and with the conventional rate case, you'll be even higher. But many of these utilities are going through a conventional rate case. So all of their information will be changing, as not all, but majority of them will be changing too. The impact on an average residential user, we show some simplifieds. Those are that 3% in the increase. And then we have the two conventional. So we have the almost 25% for this test year and looking ahead almost to 28%. So based on just doing a percentage on the current volumetric rate and the current meter rate, you see the change over quarterly. So you're looking at about a $28 increase quarterly for the conventional rate case that we'll be going through right now, and then $113 annually. We do benchmark that against the median household income. The American Water Works Association recommends keeping that about 2 to 3% per utility. So you're still under what their affordability benchmark is. Currently, these next slides, we're going to talk about the public fire protection charge, what I'm assuming you're aware of. You currently have a combination where part of the recovery is through a municipal charge and part through a direct charge on the utility bill. So with this rate case, you're looking to move approximately 33,000 from the municipal charge to the direct charge. And that is to free up some levy limit capacity. So you took about 25% of that current municipal charge amount and converting it over to the direct charge. And these next few just show how the expenses and revenues work. So this is truly a water expense, and where the water should be collecting it then through the user rates. So more and more are moving that municipal charge all to direct charge, but you still maintain some. So what the water utility is doing is expensing the general fund, then the general fund has to collect the revenue through taxes to pay the water utility. And this is the chart of the direct charge, which you have a portion of, and that's just you have the water expenses and you collect the revenue through that public fire protection direct charge. We just have some impact with the public fire protection. Just if people ask, well, will my tax bill go down? Majority of the time when you are switching over that municipal charge to a direct charge, you're using that to fill a levy limit gap. So chances are your tax bill wouldn't go down. And then another question we get, public fire protection is not fire department expenses, it's the water assets, the larger mains, the tower, the storage needed to fight fires. And then who pays for the public fire protection charge? So currently village taxpayers do, as well as customers through that direct charge. Doing it with the direct charge, those that are tax exempt, like schools, will be helping pay for that expense. We're currently with the tax portion, they are not. And many utilities do that. The estimated impact, so moving that 33,547 from municipal charge to public fire protection, it'll add about $721 charge the quarterly water bill. Annually, that's just under $29. For an average residential with a 200,000 assessment, pays about $27 annually. So it's about the same, but again, they'll probably be paying still that taxes, which you'll be using to fill your levy limit gaps. So we're recommending filing the full rate case. You need to build additional cash. You want to avoid any further debt pressures and pay existing and proposed obligations and allow for additional conversions of PFP. Note that currently the PSC allows you to do a special public fire protection application to just switch either a portion or the rest of the amount over to the direct charge, but you needed a full conventional rate case to do that. But that has to be within 5 years of the conventional rate case. So this is being done in part of the conventional rate case. Any questions?
Back on one of the original, let's see, slide maybe number 4. It was the cash one. I'm going to say maybe slide.
Historical rate performance.
It's called
Bar
historical.
chart,
Historical.
the cash one.
Try
the orange
historical.
bar chart,
Fine.
that one.
That's it. So you had talked about that we're using our cash, and that's not a good thing to pay for some of our repair. Could you explain this better?
Sure. So the orange bars are what we're recommending your cash reserves target be. And that's based off of 4 months of operating and maintenance, 100% of next year's debt and pilot payment. So we're calculating out an amount that we're recommending be the minimum amount that you have for cash reserves. And so that's those orange bars. Then the line is showing where your current cash has ended each year. So where some of them you are maintaining above the recommended amount, there's like 2022, that's a very slim margin. And that could have been due to, I would have to look, it could have been a low operating and maintenance year. Let's take a look here. It was lower. But I mean, there's various factors and that can change with how much you need and then where you end up basing.
So we have, according, in 2023, well, all these years, we've had enough cash over our target.
You have, yes.
Yeah, okay.
But not enough where you may be able to use cash to fund some of your capital improvement projects where you are needing to issue debt because the cash reserves aren't. I mean, in 2021, you could see, yes, you had a high cash reserves, but they dropped. And it could have been if you issued debt for 2 years, I would have to look more into why the spike and then the drop.
I think possibly in 2022, we bought a truck.
Okay.
I think one of our high lift trucks. I want to say that that's
that would be the
possibly why.
drop.
And we
Okay.
didn't borrow for it. We paid
Okay.
cash for it.
So that's good. And then could you go, Ben, a couple slides down? It's called water rate comparison by county. Yeah, you're already there. So with this chart, a lot of these are part of MMSD as well. Why are we? I always thought our rate was, I knew it was a little bit under everyone else, but why are we toward the top of charges or fees?
So this does not include MMSD's charge
Okay,
at all. This is just
water.
purely water. No sewer, no storm,
Okay.
no nothing.
And you had said that many of these municipalities are in the process of getting a rate change
Yeah, we're
effective,
working
so.
with a few of them.
Yeah.
So to compare where this is gonna be, to say that some of them aren't currently working through conventional rate case or soon will be. So this is just a point in time where their rates were at when we created this chart. So
And
know that there are several utilities that
We're
we're
crazy
working
high.
with.
And Lisa, for reference, the reason why a lot of these municipalities are probably lower than us is because they have much more growth where they are adding more users. So the additions of the users and the additions of the volumetric charges that they're making, they can keep their rates lower because they're adding these industrial parks, they're adding subdivisions. That's not possible really here
Mhm.
due to us being pretty much built out. So I think that when me and you talked, that was another factor that played into it.
One other question back to slide 6 there. When you talk about the cash reserves, that's just in the utilities then, right? That's not our other general fund reserves.
Correct.
Okay.
Just the water.
Just water.
Yep.
Okay, what is your projected cash reserves for the future? Looking ahead, you must have a projection on it
Go.
as the current users usage.
So projecting out, the cash is projected to not meet the target reserve.
That's kind of what it's looking like this
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, so 2024, you are doing, let's see, budget 2024, you're fine. 2026 might be due, yep, you're borrowing for 2 years of projects. But from 2027 on, you are below that benchmark.
Without the
We're
increase.
projecting doing.
That's what it kind of felt like when you're talking. That's why I
Yeah,
asked.
yeah. So you would need to be issuing debt for your future projects.
And also, part of the budget discussion tonight is going to be looking at the utility budgets that are unregulated. And I had been talking to you previously about the sewer and the storm sewer charges and having those charges adjusted due to a variety of different factors that would help offset any type of increase that would come with the water rate increase. So I can talk more about that when we get to the budget. But I'll just say that that I do have a proposal that would help offset the cost, the increased cost of the water utility increase if that were to go into effect.
Now, is that projected ahead or is that right now?
Cindy, that one
Projected ahead or is that right now?
for 2025's budget for the sewer and storm sewer.
Just that?
Correct.
Just 20, all right.
So by moving this, the main thing here is tonight is to your proposed move this water from the tax roll to the water bill,
A portion
a
of.
portion of it. And then what that will do is that frees up money in our levy,
Mhm,
which then we can use for other purposes. And then there would be an increase on the water bill
correct.
in a roundabout way. And then do we still have to do on a regular basis then rate studies if we keep getting our wholesale, if Milwaukee keeps raising our rate? Do we have to keep going through like studies to have, for us to go to the PSC to have the rate increased?
Based on projections, it like 2029, but again, that can all change depending on costs of projects. If you should have a change in users, I know there's not opportunity necessarily for growth, but you may have a change in user, which could be up or down. But you may need a conventional sooner, again, projecting out that negative cash reserve amount. Again, some simplifieds are projected in here. Right before 2029, we're projecting a 3% because that's where it's been for many years, except for the last few years, it's actually been higher. But it's continuously to monitor this. So even just doing biannual, annual cash flows like this, just to watch where you're going. And if you see a need for the conventional rate case sooner, it all depends on what assets you're adding, how much, how the cash is flowing. Are you having higher operating and maintenance expenses? Or do they drop fixing all these mains? Are you going to be saving money and not having to patch up mains? It varies, but this is just a projection based off of an annual inflation on operating and maintenance of 3%, no change in users.
And Paul, for with the rate cases, normally since we are a purchaser of wholesale water, they do have the purchase water adjustment clause that if Milwaukee were to raise our rates, we could it's a much simpler process to file with the PSC to have that adjustment. I don't think that we would necessarily have to have a whole projection based off of that. It's basically just, okay, here's what their increase is, and we give that information to them, and then the PSC kind of works on their end. And what she's proposing here is kind of what Ellers has figured.
Mhm.
The PSC does their own analysis and their own calculations to determine what they deem to be a reasonable, fair, and adequate charge. So again, this is just a proposal based off of what we have given them, but they could come back and say, oh, we need it to be lower or we need it to be higher, depending on what they find on their analysis.
It still stays regulated. So even if it goes to the water bill, you still have to do a case study for a rate increase on the water bill.
Yep, except for the simplifieds.
Yes.
If you qualify, which we would recommend anytime you qualify to do so. The purchase water, you have to wait till they do a conventional rate case, and then you have to make sure you do that application within 90 days.
Okay.
Otherwise, you've lost your opportunity to increase for the purchase water.
I've got one question here and it's a catastrophic question.
Okay.
What would happen to the village water bill if Cargill shuts down?
Nothing good.
Nothing good. Because that's our biggest that's our biggest user.
They are the biggest user. Annually they give the village in total for all the utilities and whatnot at least $500,000.
All right. So I just thinking ahead out of the box and, I didn't like the looks of this box that we're getting worked into here.
So does this rate increase help us towards 2029? Get us through till that?
Because it's a test year 2025, the only assets that you get to claim is those that will be used and useful by the end of 2025. So looking out, you're going to have, yes, additional capital. You can't add that to your rate base unless it's within the test year project. There's a step 2, but that's why it's kind of important too with test years to plan that depending on what assets you want in that rate base, which is that 6.2% you need to earn when they're calculating out your revenue requirement is based off of that rate base. So it's 6.2% times that rate base. But you can only add in the assets that are going to be used and useful by 12/31/2025, doing a test year 2025 rate case.
And in your reviewing our files and our historical data, Ellers would be of the position that this would be good for our village.
Yes, it is definitely needed.
Thank you. Any other questions for Lisa?
We need a motion to go ahead with their recommendations?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to go with the recommendations of the 2024 water rate study MPSC application by Ellers.
I'll second it.
A motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On opposition, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. The only thing I do want to mention too with conventional rate cases is it does take from the time you file it 6 to 9 months before you'll have those rates in place too. So we're simplified. It's like 45 days. Purchase water is quick. This takes time. So you're likely to see rates implemented maybe February, March.
Yeah, I think
timing,
we
or
were-
time it out with billing cycles.
I do recall us being told that on the initial presentation.
Okay.
So we prepared for that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Lisa, can you just stick around for the next item? That'd be wonderful.
Next item, discussion and possible action on resolution 24-17, authorizing a portion of the current municipal charge be allocated to the direct charge for the public fire protection recovery.
So this resolution is presented to us by Ellers. They need to have that passed according to state regulations to make that part of the rate case and authorize that transition of that 33,000 from the tax roll to the water utility direct charges. We can't do that without that resolution being passed.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to pass resolution 2417.
I'll second it.
A motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On opposition, say nay. Motion passes. Thanks again.
Thank you.
We appreciate.
We will now go back to the unfinished business, which is the discussion on the 2025 budget. You most certainly can stay if you'd like. We do have a PowerPoint if you wanted to, yeah, I know, you should have just left it. You wanna
And
kill
the
the light?
33,000 was for the fire hydrants? Is that what it was?
Equipment, yeah.
There's just
Not to go to
general
the
equipment
chimney.
for firefighting.
You.
Okay.
Sorry, one moment.
Nobody home yet.
Oh, fine, fight me.
It's freaking hot. Nope, nobody home yet.
Oh, it's doing something.
It wasn't before.
I'm gonna make a motion.
There we go.
There we go. They make a motion, we turn the heat down.
Make a motion that Paul can't ever touch that again.
Turn it down 2 notches.
All right,
Can I throw
So,
some water on the rocks?
Start with the recap and then I'll take it from there.
sure.
Thank you.
So this first slide here is just a recap of the previous discussion that happened about 2 weeks ago. Just to, kind of remind everybody what happened. We have budgetary pressures this year, and without any cuts, this number it has shifted over the past couple weeks as we've had more quotes come in from different vendors like Taylor Computers and MuniCode for our ordinance software. And there were a bunch of different proposals proposed to the village by the trustees. And some of them we had already incorporated, and so it's just kind of been a moving target here, and I apologize for that. And there are a large amount of capital expenditures that we are being financed through tax dollars by cash. Some of those are the dump truck is the biggest one out of all this. And we also talked about the community events committee and fundraising. We talked about kind of how that should be all broken out. If the kind of getting the history of when the fireworks transition from a general fund item into the 101 account. Should the community events committee be raising money just for the parade, or should it be for the parade and fireworks? We had a discussion about that. We also had a discussion about the stuff like the flower baskets and how much is funded through donation. If we should look at moving towards a kind of like a half and half, having more donation and sponsorship based for these things. And then we discussed each department with regards to the revenues and expenditures, and briefly discussed the utilities, the rates, and how capital projects would be financed. So with that, I will give it back to President Kasdorf. I don't know if you want to, when you want to let Kevin come back up to speak, but I'll just remind you that he's looking to talk on this.
Thank you. You can go to the next slide. So after our last meeting, I did reach out. I asked the board to submit ideas. I know Ben has been working extensively with the department heads, and I've also been heavily involved in the discussions. And I'm going to go through these, and then these are proposals to the non-utility budgets. And with these numbers tonight, this gives us a balanced budget. And then once we get through this page, we have another 2 slides of additional suggestions that came in from the board. Myself and the administration put some ideas out there, and we can touch on those. But again, the main thing right now is what I'm about to present does give us a balanced budget. And with that, we have the fire department. We would reduce their capital contribution by $5,000. This will not affect their operating budget. We will, for the police, postpone the e-bike proposal. And then that's also, it was suggested to do further research of a bike patrol. We have that at $5,000. The library discussed, and they can, I believe, will fund one of their new computers from their reserve fund for $2,852. Overall, their budget is still increasing, but they are getting $0 from the property general fund because they have an increase on the increase from bridges.
Correct.
From us, but your overall budget is still increasing on the revenues because you have that larger sum of money.
The intergovernment. Yeah, and the intergovernmental aid and whatnot.
Yes. Yep. DPW, we have them at reducing some overtime. I do recognize that this could be a problem in winter, depending on the snowfalls, but we have them at 2508. That also then adjusted for taking Jim into retirement, and then the new hire coming in at his lower labor rate. We are also planning on doing less salt, but it came in at the same price. Waukesha Center for Growth, which does economic development, we would pause our participation in that for 1 year for $3,000. We have a capital tree fund project that we do trees on Hampton. We would not do any of those for 2025, and we still have grant money available. And I did not, yeah, 9,000.
Yep.
9,000 about dollars on that.
Oh, okay.
Flower baskets, we plan to reduce them by 50%. Those are the ones that hang on the light poles. Yeah, DPW would take over the planting of those from the current contractor that we use. And DPW would also switch the boulevards from annuals to perennials. And we would be looking to reduce that account by $1,500. And then finally, the fireworks, we would do both a taxpayer dollars, and then we would also seek sponsors, and we would reduce that by $5,500. We also then, and this will be a discussion in a few minutes, we can bingo funds contribute to being part of the sponsors for the fireworks. And then with a reduction of, it's basically 50%, front office staff, Ben's office would participate in working with our sponsors. It should be noted that the numbers in red total about $30,000. And this really is a 1-year fix, only because the price tag on the dump truck is about $255,000, which is really throwing us into a problem for this year.
28,860 I have.
What's that?
28,860.
Yeah, it's about right.
Yep.
We have a little, it's not exact dollars. So the proposals in front of you have been discussed with the departments. No significant issues have been raised. And so this part would be open for discussion. I would say that on the next couple pages we have that I'll show you, we have alternatives, but those would require a lot of additional research and trying to figure out where the money, like the amount of the dollars. Does anyone have any questions on that?
No, but can we just hold this now and go on through and talk
Yes.
about the rest of it?
Yes. And so I'll just go through these. This is then a summary of everything else that had come in from staff, ourselves, and department heads. One of it was use surplus, which is our general fund, or incur new debt. Finance the purchase of the dump truck, or possibly lease the dump truck. We did look into that, and Craig did not think that it was even possible because it is a specialized vehicle, and it would likely cost more because you'd have to probably most likely go through like a leasing company or a fleet maintenance for that. So most likely that would be, and then we don't own the vehicle, so cut fireworks entirely, increase bingo revenues through price increases for the supplies, and a reduction in the extra amounts being given at the sessions. Several trustees did offer their salaries to pay for the debt or the deficit. However, we did check with the village attorney, and there are some legal issues with that, and it can be done, but it's not necessarily the easiest way, if I understand that.
Correct. There is, if I can just quickly,
Sure.
I read through the attorney's response to my question before the meeting, and they said that it is illegal and prohibited to change trustee salaries in the middle of a term. So if something like that were to happen, again, I would have to triple check, but it would have to basically be the next in April when the new trustees are sworn in, whether it's the same or new ones. That was when any type of change to the salary would have to be implemented.
And if they did donate, they could donate the salary back, if I understood that, but they would still have to take the money,
We'd have to pay it out.
and then we could but so they're paying tax on that money is what that
Correct.
discussion came down to.
Correct.
The next item was Frontier Park and Park Maintenance. The Butler Little League charged them an annual fee. Right now, we do not charge them anything. The cost of the chalk and the labor to apply could be sponsored by the league itself and not DPW staff. Increase rental income on the 3 regular groups that rent the community building. Next page is DPW branch collection, do 1 time a month versus 2, or eliminate the service completely. The police, any restructuring possibilities with no significant impact to public safety. And finally was eliminating or reducing health insurance deductible reimbursement, which is the HRA benefit that the village pays their employees, which has a price tag of about $12,500. However, the side note on that is there is a potential issue with the diversified and union contracts. We would have to investigate that further, and I put in there that this would have to be a closed session discussion because it would, I think that's a salary and benefits issue. We'll come back to, I'll read the final result, and then we can talk about the budget, and then Kevin, I'll invite you up for your comment. So the final result then is what we have tonight is the proposed changes that I put on the initial slide will give us a balanced budget for 2025. Each department has contributed to the success of the village being properly funded. Most importantly, staff wages and benefits will not be affected, and there'll be minimal charges to our operations. Further discussions and budgetary motions can be made when the budget is up for final consideration in November. However, if a change is needed, the appropriate funding will need to be determined. And then I must have put that in there twice, that it has minimal changes to our current operations. So Kevin, if you'd like to come up and speak to the park, by all means, you could come back if you'd like. And then anyone else wants to speak, they could. Could you make sure that
A lot of
microphone-
government, huh?
Could you make sure that microphone is on?
He's on.
Thank you. Go ahead.
When it comes to finances, I'm not the greatest. I know from what I've seen in my 15 to 20 years, I'm not exactly sure how long I've been on Park and Rec or Community Events Committee. Things have happened in the past, which we have changed our name from Park and Rec to Community Events Committee. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not saying anything, but as soon as that happened, there were some expenditures that happened at the park, which I had no say in. Whether we should have or not, I don't know. That is up to the people that we elect. For us to consider the 3 people that are on the events committee and kind of hope that they will raise the money to pay for the parade or pay for the fireworks, I think is just ludicrous, because 3 years ago during COVID, it never happened. We didn't make money. We basically, I think we broke even. We are finally starting to turn because of the efforts of our 3 group members. We are starting to make a profit, which years ago, again, where did the money that was slated for us and any money we did raise that was supposed to be in our account and never supposed to go to the general fund? I mean, I'm not saying anything, but this is out of my donation of my sweat and tears and whatever, my family, which I always loved to go up north on the 4th of July, but I said, no, I want to do this for the Butler. So for the village to actually depend on us, I think is ludicrous for us to even the thought of it. The village always, if I'm not mistaken, my numbers may be off. The parade, I think, was always donated about $2,000. The fireworks was, I don't know, $7,500 to $10,000. Again, we never had any say in any of that. That was automatically donated by the village as a separate line item. What happens after this is up to you, gentlemen and ladies. I said my piece.
I think in the past, ground numbers, fireworks are about $11,000. And I don't think we contribute anything from the general fund to the parade.
Correct. The numbers that I ran were that this year the parade spent about 5,600. They raised a little more than 7,000. So they paid for the parade and then some.
So
And then
the reason I put, I mean, it came up twice, and Kevin, you're not the only one that, there's also volunteers and with your committee as well that participate and make sure that it's, bottom line, it does go to the village. So the money for the parade or from bingo stays at the park or within the park. This year, we are going to make a separate for 2025, a line item for the fireworks. I believe we're going to separate that out.
And that has already happened.
Yes,
And
okay.
I have separated that out.
Does anyone have, I mean, at the end of the day, we have to come up with, I'm just going to say about $29,000 because we have a very large purchase of a dump truck that's throwing us a little bit for 2025.
Well, I think part of this is that new police car that we weren't expecting. 'Cause that was supposed to come in next year, wasn't it?
Yes, the 2024 was an unexpected purchase
Right.
because
So
of the thousands of dollars being paid for repairs on the old 2019.
Correct,
So-
but I'm just saying that was part of this problem right now
Yes.
is that part of it.
Well, it ate up about $50,000 of money. The police department had given back, they had 23,000 in their capital fund and they gave that back and put it toward the 2024 squad car purchase.
Right.
But yes, we did use surplus. I mean,
Yeah, this is part of the crunch.
yes.
So we got a police car that we weren't expecting yet.
Yep.
And then we got the dump truck, which we are expecting.
Yes.
So that's the biggest crunch we have at this point.
Have we always paid cash for our vehicles that we buy?
It is my assumption that yes, we have.
Yes. Is there any advantage to financing part of that?
The
Budget wise?
what would happen is if we financed the dump truck, that would then free up $52,000 out of the capital. It would then shift it to borrowing, and then we can, and depending on how we have the debt structured, then that would increase the debt service going forward for, I would probably structure it for 10 years. And that would then raise the tax levy to then pay for the debt. So that's kind of how it would be financed. It wouldn't be an immediate upfront cost. It would then be spread out over the course of 10 years, how we would probably structure that type of debt issuance.
But right, as we've worked it before, we've always paid cash for the dump truck and the police cars and stuff like that, only because we didn't want to get into the levy, raising the levy limit.
Okay.
We just tried to keep it as low as possible.
And we are restricted by the state to only having we can only borrow 5% of our equalized value, which we currently have 45% of that still available.
And the old dump truck, what, gets raffled, it goes
So
somewhere for
it'll get
auction?
auctioned off. It'll get sold off. I have no idea how much that would net us,
So we have
and
no idea what that is worth.
I don't.
If you go into wisconsinsurplus.com, they have a bunch of trucks that are coming through it right now that are not quite exactly the same, but close. And those are going for right around $8,000 to $9,000 used.
Okay. How old's our dump truck?
22,
22.
it's over 20. And I know
22 years old.
at least. And I know the dump truck was pushed off many, many years and they ended up, I know prior discussions with Jim was he felt this equipment should start to be changed out about the 15 to 18 year mark. Because after that, they just start putting a lot of money into the everything,
Breakdowns, maintenance.
breakdowns, maintenance. Yeah, and just for, I think our the 2013 dump truck, I think we paid about 120,000 for, and that was 10 years ago. So in 10 years, the cost doubled.
And this is all with the given of transferring that 33,000 over from.
Correct. That's already factored into the
That's-
budget.
That's what I meant, yeah, factored in already.
Yep.
And then going back to alternatives on how to bring more money in, have we considered our fees for parking permits, raising that?
Those went up last year, and that increased our revenue by about 2,000. We increased it by $3 a quarter.
Okay, what's that, $41
It's at
now?
36 right now.
36.
Correct.
So can we
How
bring
does that
that up to
compare to
like,
like Milwaukee or whatever?
We did a comparison last year when we raised it, and it's a little bit iffy. I think that we were the lowest besides Germantown. A lot of places do between 20 to 30 bucks a month actually for their parking. Germantown does like, I think 10. But yeah, us right now we're at 12 bucks a month.
okay, so I mean, that's something that we can honestly say we
You-
should.
You can look at that. You can look at building
That would
permits.
be something at the actual budget discussion then, right? That's. is
Well,
that what
we
that's
could-
decided, or-
we need to get, I mean, the ideal way to do this is hash this out tonight because
Sure.
the next meeting we have, this in mid-November, we have to push out, or we have to have it done. You have to have your budget done.
What I need to do is this week, after this meeting this week, I likely have to go out to publish the actual budget proposal. Changes can still happen at the end, but I need to have something that I can turn into the paper that says, here's our proposed budget. And then after, so then we have the public notice requirements met. And then on that day, we can make changes to it. That's totally allowed, but I just need to have something firm that I can move forward with and craft the document.
Does anyone see any issues with the proposals that we had? If you want to go back to that one slide. I mean, does anyone see anything on, go ahead, please.
Do I have to state who I am? Charlene Benjamin, 4503 North 126th Street, President of the Library Board. I'd like to ask that the line for the library be changed to read something along the lines that the library, in recognition of the challenges you guys are facing with the budget, will ask for a 0% increase from the taxpayers' dollars. We will need to make up that revenue somehow. We have some schemes in mind, but rather than specifying the line item, just that we're asking, or we're saying, if you can't give us any more than what you already did last year, we would take a 0% increase on the taxpayer dollars.
Wouldn't that, what happens with the increase in pay for staff?
That's all. If we can increase our revenues, that won't be an issue. If we cannot increase our revenues, that still won't be an issue because we need to get that staff up to pay
I
equity.
know.
We'll have to find some other places. Maybe we'll start washing our own windows. Who knows?
And if I make sure I understand this correctly, the 2852 that puts us at zero.
A 0% increase from last year, correct?
For the general fund only.
True.
Because you're
Correct.
getting additional monies from bridges that wasn't expected.
We did get an increase from bridges.
Right.
And we calculated in some grants that we've
Yes.
been promised.
So with our proposal, you still have ample monies in your reserve account above the 20% guideline,
If
well above
we
20.
dropped our guideline based on recommendations from board and the village last year, we still have money in the reserve, although right now that money is working for us and creating revenue.
Mhm.
So we need to tread that fine line between shooting ourselves in the foot by spending all the revenue or reserve versus making money off of that reserve. But yes, we still have, if we, I mean, it's up to the board and director to make sure that our budget balances at the end of the year. And we will do that. I mean, we always have in the past. And
Right.
if it means hitting the reserve fund, then we would take that action. If it means finding a way to increase our revenues, then we have to look at that.
Agreed. I mean, that's where, I mean, I think that number was like 30,000 and change, your reserve fund. And I-
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and I believe that you guys are still on track to spend 6,000 of
Right.
that for the mainframe, so it'll drop down to around 24.
Right, right. We're taking money out for the 2024 budget to finance some of the stuff we did this year. So we're spending it.
would the library be able to work with a 1-year, this is a 1-year solution? Is that something you think you'd be able to work through?
Yes, we can work with it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I mean, that's life, right?
Well, it's just, I mean, every
I feel
department,
bad for the chief and his electric bike. I'm sorry. I
it's
never-
just a 1-year, I mean, that's been the challenge with this one, is simply to give the village good numbers. And these, unfortunately, are some cuts we have to make across the board, and every department is
Right.
taking a little bit of a hit.
So anyway, it's a matter of semantics and wording, but if we could just change the wording on that library
Sure.
line, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And we'll make it work.
And I don't,
Again, what would you like to write, the words to say?
That the library will accept, or whatever you want to say instead of accept. The library is okay with a 0% increase in tax revenues
From last year.
yes,
24.
from 2024 to 2025.
All right.
we can do
Does
that.
that work?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just re-clarify, what Tom brought up about borrowing, so under just the scenario, so if we borrowed, that justifies the tax levy increase up to a certain amount, you know, within those borrowing limits and so on. And then we would, so ultimately the taxpayers then do pay for that. Or there's another way, I should say, the taxpayers pay for that, for the dump truck.
It's basically a pay me now or pay me later.
Sure, but what I'm trying to get clear in my own mind, so let's just say, you know, hypothetically, 2 years from now, we find ourselves in an overall crunch, but we don't have a big purchase to borrow off of. Would we still have that option of borrowing more money and then that you can increase your levy because of that? Or does
It would have to be
with
for a
major
specific
purchase?
project.
I'm sorry?
It would have to be for a specific project where we don't have the ability to say, well, we're just going to borrow at least.
Okay, you have to
Yeah.
justify it then, okay.
Correct.
Okay, so in that's something to consider then, like we have an option now that we might not have.
Correct. So as Trustee Sardina alluded to, to just restate that the 52,000 would then come off of the roll. It would be borrowed for during the capital project borrowing process for the roads and the sewer and all that type of stuff. And then that would then be financed for probably the next 10 to 20 years. And then that would be increasing the amount that the tax levy would be, and would also decrease the amount of borrowing we could do into the future. So that's kind of the benefits versus the cost.
Sure.
We've been saving for the dump truck though, in the capital fund, which is exactly what we've been doing. So to go out and try to take a loan and pay even more and
Yeah.
take a 1-year sacrifice on a little bit here to, just because we don't want to cut or push the projects out, just to pay more and push it off to the future doesn't, I mean, I don't think that's,
I'm
that
not,
doesn't make sense to
not
me.
for that at all.
It's
I,
always better paying cash than borrowing. but
yes,
just, yeah.
Is there any discount when we pay cash?
probably not.
It's a check getting written to them either way.
The one thing I did want to,
Would be our discount, I guess,
Yeah, the interest, yeah.
not paying on a loan.
On the
Mhm.
patrol bike, are we keeping one for 2025? We're going to drop that also?
Drop it all off.
Okay.
yeah, that gets
Unless we
pushed
get
out.
somebody to donate $5,000 to the police department. There you go.
And just for the, to clarify a comment from Mr. Endries, this village staff would take on raising the money for the fireworks. I've already reached out to a potential sponsor and they have pledged me up to $1,000. And that's just one of the sponsors. So I have many connections to people that I can reach out to and talk to about the situation.
And they
So
will get the accolades like fireworks or.
correct, sponsored by XYZ. Yep.
I mean, the one thing I had put in there was, and I think this might be a separate park discussion, but it keeps kind of surfacing, is the bingo funds have always contributed only to the parade. So Trustee Meyer, could those bingo funds contribute to the fireworks as well?
No,
Why not?
well, there's no guarantee of bingo, as we've seen in the past.
Right.
And if we break it down, it's not just the bingo funds that contribute to the parade. If we go chronological, you've got the breakfast with Santa in December, you've got bingo January, February, March, April, and May, and then you've got breakfast with the Easter Bunny in April-ish, based off of when Easter falls. Some of the variables that you're looking at, one, there's no guarantee, right? Weather's going to drive participation, and that's true for all of those events. And the other thing that I think we have to look at too is when you look at the cost of those breakfast events, we bring in about 125 people-ish, right? Historically, Don's Tire and Auto has sponsored all of the children and all of the seniors for the Christmas event. Santa and Mrs. Claus have sponsored, what's that?
Can you say what you donate?
Sure.
I would appreciate it if you would.
Okay. Santa and Mrs. Claus have brought in the milks and the juices the last 2 years. And then I've sponsored the rest. So the pancake mix, the syrup, the sausage, and everything that goes with making the food has been sponsored by our family. And that's true for both events. If it's going to come down to where the community events committee has to be a moneymaker for the village, then for selfish reasons, I feel that the sponsorship on my part has to stop. You know, so you're looking at a cost then of probably $300 an event to sponsor those things. So that's an extra $600 that comes out of the budget towards the parade. Now, if you look at the 4th of July parade and all of the printing that goes along with that, all of the postcards that get printed for, you know, breakfast with Santa, all of that printing is done at my expense. The ink, the postcards, we've had the village post them, but that's an expense that has, you know, historically has been donated, right? So if you look at all of the costs that go into those things, the printing for all of the bingo sheets, the time that goes into all of that, can bingo support the parade and the fireworks? The answer is no.
No.
And I think it's unfair to put that burden of both of those squarely on the shoulders of that committee. What happens if we miss an event because of weather? That's $1,000 that we don't get. So how do we make that up? Is that more on the community events committee? So now we have to figure out where we come up with another event to sponsor that. So I don't think so. I think when you look at what we spent last year on the parade, I don't know if I don't know if Ben's candy and your candy and everyone's candy came out of the parade celebration or if that was separate, right? I know that we had, it probably seems like it doesn't based off of the numbers that I ran. I think the candy for each area was done independent and probably out of your respective budgets. But there was still candy out of our budget for the Christmas float and the Easter bunny. You know, and then we still came in under the money. We still spent less than the money we brought in, which seems like there should be money moved forward, but we know there's not because there isn't money to move forward. So I just don't see how it's possible to put more on the three of us. And sure, there's volunteers that help, you know, but you know, you, Paul, and Mark, and you know, and Mark's, you know, has the in with the Easter bunny. I don't want to, right? But it's I just don't think it's possible.
Additionally, that kind of drifts away from the actual purpose of park.
It really does.
They should be more worried about what they can do for the community than budgetary stuff. Not that that doesn't have to be considered, of course, but.
In the past, money's come out of our fund to help support the replacement of things at the top lot. If I'm not mistaken, money came out of our fund to help support some of the bathroom. And maybe that's where that money went, Kev. I don't know. We don't know, right?
No.
But maybe that's part of that. I don't, you know, but it does kind of, to your point, Mark, take away the purpose of it. You know, now we're not doing it to bring the community together.
Right.
Right. We're doing it to see how much we can make.
Yep.
Well, first of all, there's, it all stays at the park. So I think big picture is the community events needs to maybe look and be maybe refocused at what their mission is, because it all stays at the park. So just because something gets done isn't that the purpose of your committee, is to bring people together? And fireworks do that. They bring people
Well, I
together.
don't disagree with that.
But you don't want to you don't think bingo can offer anything to the fireworks, would be your position.
On top of sponsoring the value of I don't know how we get more out of it. I don't know how much more do you want to get out of the committee?
Yeah.
Well, I think
Say,
I mean, we gave an extra $1,600 last year to the fireworks. Right? I mean,
it's,
but that's not a guarantee.
and what's ironic is
Shuffling
the
minds,
fact that the
but-
previous administrator told us that our focus needed to be more on the events and less about the park.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So
It's a name change.
you know, and that's the name change. You know,
which is fine. I mean, we're with these numbers, we're a little bit more transparent, and I appreciate that you recognize that there are others that do volunteer and donate time and items and things to the park in general.
Yeah.
So,
Before we had bingo, how did we raise money for parades? And
When Charlene did the parades years ago, they gave her a specific number. The village gave her a
Village,
specific
right?
number. Specific number. Was it $2,500 or something like that? Did you? Okay, slap my face.
That's twice.
There was a non-elected fund that had a balance in it from.
Right.
whoever worked on the parade beforehand.
Right.
And then I would send out letters and send money. And legal generate or dropped off a nice big check. And that essentially paid for the parade that you got back then, which is not as significant as the parade Brad is presenting you with.
Correct.
Sarah, you put your hand up?
Yeah, can I say something?
Sure. Did you want to come up? Sure. You don't have to, but go ahead.
So I am also on the community events committee. It's basically the three of us that do a lot of stuff, and there are people that help out, but it's majority of the three of us who do a lot. And I am agreeable to maybe helping out with what we can to balance the budget for the village, because it is just for the 1 year. I don't have a problem helping with what we can, but I agree with what Brian said, nothing's guaranteed, like the numbers kind of slide for us because it is,
Weather
whoever shows
dependent.
up is what we get. We can't raise more than if they don't show up, so, but I'm agreeable in, the spirit of trying to get the budget balanced and considering it is just 1 year, and I can see other departments and stuff making some sacrifices, so, I think I don't have a problem with trying to help out with what we can.
But there again, that could be a slippery slope, giving back. I mean, next year, year after, I just don't want it to be a slippery slope. We're trying to balance the budget this year and try to move forward with a balanced budget from now on. Because we never had these discussions with the previous administrator.
Never.
Mm-mm.
Never. And that's what's really frustrated me. Now we come to this crunch where you're willing to open up the books and show us what's going on. And I'm very pleased that you're doing that.
And I would just like to, again, state that I don't want to, I'm trying to alleviate some of the work that the committee does where, like I said, I have my multiple contacts that, and like I said, I've already started reaching out to people to get, to gauge support for that. I already have had a pledge of between $500 to $1,000. So I have plenty of contacts and plenty of people that I can talk to that, again, would not require you guys to take on additional work. Like I said, that's something that, all it would take for my staff would be drafting a form email and sending it out. So.
I don't really know a lot of anything. So, I just know that, we have gone to fireworks at other small communities. I have seen the firefighters kind of passing the hat through the participants, the people who are enjoying it, to help raise money for future fireworks or offset the cost of what they already paid. That I'm not sure. But I know that they have done those kinds of things. And they've also had, and I know this would also be a lot of work, but I know that they have little festivals, food trucks, kind of, things going on before the fireworks. I know you guys have done things where you had, I think, music down.
Yeah, the last 2 years, there's been a band.
Yeah, at the end, so I don't know if that's something we should consider, it's food trucks down there, making it more of a transitional from the parade into the fireworks, a continued event. If that would be something that would help raise money.
We did the pass the hat, thank you, during the centennial. And they walked in the parade and collected money, and then they went down the fireworks and got some money. Wasn't that much, but it helped. Right.
And I'm sorry, what's your last name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rick,
I can find, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, if I could clarify this, so with the bottom line there, 5,500 would just be taken off and raised. That's the amount that will be raised.
Correct.
And then the regular
Village
general
funds the
fund
other
will still
half of
supply
it.
the rest.
Correct.
Okay, so then as far as what bingo was or was not funding, that would remain the same.
So bingo has a revenue expectation of about 7,000 in the current budget. Their parade expenditures are budgeted at 7,000. So whatever they raise currently will then go to their budget for the parade. And then the remaining amounts are paid for by taxpayer funds. And then obviously the donations or sponsorships that we would be gathering.
Can't we do something with the concession stand down there too for 4th of July? Sure. I realize we can't get enough volunteers in Butler to operate it, but can we make a proposal to one of our local establishments, Cardinal
The
Club?
fire department.
Or the fire
And their baked
department?
potatoes.
Or something to, let's say, Derby District or Cardinal Club to see if they want to rent that concession stand and sell beer for the fireworks, beer and soda.
With
A way to bring in revenue.
yeah, with a commission back to the village for,
I can remember years, maybe 30 years ago, that was a happening place and you could buy refreshments down there. I don't know if it was the Lions or the
that was,
Veterans or
it
whoever.
was a Lions Club back
Lions
then.
Club.
Ones I remember is I was part of was Butler Youth Baseball. One year we did very well and we cashed out. The following year, it was also 100 some degrees, which we were lucky to break even.
Okay. And true, back in the olden days too, we had softball games down there and that concession stand was open so there was other ways that we were bringing money in. I don't think anybody plays softball anymore.
Yeah, there's no softball leagues.
People play it, but they're just not here.
I think it also depends on what day 4th of July falls on. Falls on Friday, people are on, falls on Monday, people are leaving.
Right, it's a
There are
Friday
more
next year.
opportunities to raise funds, Wednesday, or Thursday.
And we're also looking at restructuring the diamond rentals because we have had an increase in the diamond rentals this year for different events and sporting events. We've had for some reason, we've had a rugby team rent them out in both the spring and the fall. So we've restructured the fees around that because before it was just a flat $250 fee. It didn't say per day, per week, per month. So I could only charge them $250 a time that they wanted to rent it, and they rented it at, for weeks on end. So now we've restructured it. So now, we're going to be generating some more revenue with regards to that when people rent the fields. So, again, that's just another thing we could put out there. And again, we could also look at, if we needed to, not saying that we have to, but going back to the banner sponsorships, kind of like how Menominee Falls has their baseball diamonds. We have plenty of room on the gates where we could get businesses to, do that. So again, there's options. There's options.
But none of that really helps us right now.
Correct.
So we're kind of, I think, losing where we should be.
Yeah. So we have to
That
decide on this.
we're thinking about, things that are going to raise the money. We need to look at what we need to do now, right? And I think we should come back to this, right? Of different ways, but right now that's not going to help us. Another thing is we have everything kind of listed. Since the chief is here, I just have a question, like what everybody else has listed, what that cut hurts. What other than this will not affect operating budget? What does that $5,000 take away from what you guys had planned?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, so we started that last year
Yeah.
after sitting down, Ben and I, with the fire chief. We realized there was a need to start a capital fund for them because we had not. The old way was they need something, they come to us, they say, we need an ambulance, we go get it. We were never saving for them. So last year we started with, that was the first year of it, and we did $20,000, just kind of a arbitrary number. So this year we had started at 20 and this would be 15. So it doesn't.
I think that's great. I commend the board because I just got here. So I commend the board for actually doing that, right? For everything, for the building. There's a lot other than that you guys have started. So I'd like to commend them for that because if we don't look forward, we come to where we are right now.
Sure. Correct. So the 5,000 proposed, like Chief says, it won't affect him for next year because his operating budget that he proposed remains the same.
And again, if something catastrophic were to happen, where you would need $10,000 in capital money for XYZ, we have that then budgeted that if you needed to use it, like, let's just say like you had a series of hoses that,
Actually, after this all said and done, we hit on $107,000 grant. That I'm responsible for $300 of it. That if I take out of that last fund, that's my portion of it. Our guys hit on the grant this year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm losing it. because,
Yep.
But you got to come up with 53.
Our portion is 5%.
Okay.
Which is roughly $5,600.
Okay.
and so that's, in theory because that was not, you let us know about that like last week or early this week. So that's not what was originally in here. So that is what, part of that 15,000 could be spent on to supplement, because that's all capital purchases. It's, various cameras, various equipment.
Thermal imaging cameras, forecast meters, and we have basically a half of the we apply.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I
So you
mean,
don't know if this is coming through or not. until
right.
All of a sudden it's there.
So you can't put in the budget. So this is like, our planning last year actually is perfect because now, they pay 5% of 107,000. We have it ready to go. And that's not-
100%.
and
Like I
an
said,
issue.
that's why
So-
I commend the board. I want to, put that on record that that's what it is. So not all doom and gloom.
Yeah, right. No, I think that's positive. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna go down the list. Let's see if we have any issues and we can kind of move forward here. Does anyone, and this would be the time to discuss it. Does anyone have any issues with the fire department at $5,000 reduction?
No.
Police department postponing the e-bike for 1 year, further research. Anyone have any issue with that?
I don't know, that's when I guess I have a bit of an issue. I know it sounds really frivolous to say that, but I guess I have relatives and good friends on Milwaukee police. So I sort of got a peek into what's happening in the city, plus having worked there myself, even though I haven't worked there for a little while. And the worse it gets there, the more likely it's going to spill over into our municipality. And with that in mind, I feel like anything that our people can do that's proactive in keeping the fabric of our community safe and informed, and our relationship with our coppers good, that we should take every opportunity. And 5,000, like, I know it fits in this page. I certainly don't argue that, but that would be my only issue with that, is that I'd rather see that happen sooner because it is so proactive and not reactive.
I'll let the chief speak to that, but I will add a comment that we did, part of your concerns is we added to staff with a referendum for the police department.
Yep.
So we are being proactive that way. And then we are getting them, perfect example is squad cars at work. So and we have a plan for that. So chief, did you want to add anything about pushing your bike out 1 year?
Thank you for that. I do just want to point out, obviously, I understand the totality of the budget here within the village, and we're a portion of that. This bike patrol program was an idea that I had as a new chief. One of my goals and visions is that we continue to engage with the community in ways that we either haven't in the past or we can make a positive impact. That's one of those ideas. Maybe in a normal budget year, that cost of $5,000 isn't significant. I can see that it is this year. So I understand where we sit. I do also want to point out that this program and this piece of equipment or pieces of equipment was the only capital request that I made for this year. And I did reduce our actual operating budget by almost 8% for 2025 from what it was for 2024. So appreciate that consideration. I also am willing to look at other options, whether it be donations, our current donation account, or other ways of funding to get programs like this or others that are important to me or our department up and running. So I don't vehemently oppose that. I appreciate your comments. And I'm just looking for ways to continue to engage the community and look for ideas that maybe we haven't had here in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That answers my concern.
Thank you. Library, we had Charlene speak to that. We're going to correct the wording on that. Anyone have any issues? DPW is not here to speak to it. Basically, that was just reducing their overtime, but we might get stuck on a bad winter. We don't know. And the DPW, from what I understand, is already pretty lean with their operation.
Correct. And a good, and I would say a good amount of that reduced overtime was I was calculating the previous amount that I had presented initially based off of the wages as they were last year. There's a lot of working things in that document. So I needed to correct it to account for the new person's wage and take out Jim's. So overall, the payroll itself dropped because of that. And so that's what a good chunk of that reduced overtime budget was.
Did we save money on salt last year?
We didn't save money on salt. We have that now in reserve, so we were gonna be needing to borrow less, because when we commit to the contract, we have to spend and get everything. So we're asking for less this year, but the price went up. So Craig kind of just said it would pretty much be a wash.
Thank you. Waukesha Center for Growth, that's economic development. That we just started, I think, last year. We're just gonna pause the participation on that. And it's my understanding that that's 3,000, but if we need them, they would still step in and help, is my understanding.
Yeah, it is my understanding that if a business went to them for aid or help, they wouldn't say, sorry, we didn't get the $3,000 from Butler, we're not helping you, because their goal is countywide. This is, I think, just to participate in their, they basically help us with any type of planning that we would have, or if we wanted to pursue incentives for something, they would help us out with that. That it does not, we're not gatekeeping the other businesses' access to their resources.
Thank you. Capital Tree Fund, this is just for the trees and the grates growing up Hampton. We had started that this year, I think, or last year.
Last year.
So we would just put that on hold for a year.
That's the 9,000 one.
Yeah.
It's not on my PowerPoint, but.
That should be 9,000. And we did talk with Craig on that. Because of the expense of the grates and the concrete work and things like that, it's not worth doing half of that. Because it's just better to get a bigger amount to do all the concrete at once, because you have to tear out sidewalks and stuff. So it's pretty labor intensive. Anyone want to have issues with that?
And I will just say, just to put it in your minds, you will still be seeing some tree work around the village into next year. That's just because with everything going on, we were not able to complete, because we have a grant right now for about $9,000 from the state. We weren't able to finish that project, but that grant runs till the end of next year. So you're going to still be seeing work done, but it's for the money that should have been spent this year. So it's just being pushed off a year. So we are going to be having that grant get paid to us.
That
next
was
year.
for the trees that had to come down though, wasn't it?
Correct. Correct.
Flower baskets, cut those in half do half of those for this next year. And DPW would take those over. We did talk with Craig. He did not seem to think that would be a problem. And then we would eliminate a contractor for that. So that's a $1,500 deduction. Any comments? And keep in mind that the flowering with, especially east of 127th, where we've done the tree work, those new trees are blossoms, or they blossom. So you do have the flowering tree next to a basket. So there's still some colors. Fireworks, taxpayer dollars and trying sponsors for the first year. I'll scratch off the bingo part of it. And then the village hall can try it and we see what we do. Obviously the show has to go on. So I think it would be fair to say that if we don't get enough sponsors, we still need to put on a show, and the expectation would be to do at least the bare minimum of what we had this year, because I don't think it'd be fair to go get sponsors and then kind of do a not so great or less of a show. So I think If we took that approach, we would have to possibly hit the general fund to cover any balance, but I think the goal would be at least to raise $5,500, if not more, and put that all towards a fireworks show. Does anyone have any issues with that?
Why not take the $2,000 that's levied towards the celebration and put that towards the fireworks and just make the parade budget based off of what revenues the community events committee can garner for their events? And then
Well,
you've already got almost half of what we need to raise based off of that.
I think the $2,000 you reference is also part of other things at the park, if I'm not mistaken.
So are you talking about the difference between what you spent this year and what you raised,
Oh,
or?
isn't there $2,000 that's geared towards the celebration fund?
I think that is the community events like program budget, and that is usually covering the bingo bugle, and the daubers and the squares that you guys use. So that's what the $2,000 usually goes towards.
I don't think other than daubers, I don't anticipate having any other expenses this year.
Okay, so with the bugle, the 174 every month. Okay,
I think we agreed we didn't need to do that.
okay.
And we can finalize that at our meeting next week, but I think if we look at a way of bridging that gap between the 55 and the 11, if you take that, even if you left us $500 and you took $1,500, there's $1,500 more towards the fireworks.
Well, and we can leave that in, I mean, it's staying in the 101 account, which is the park. So we can always look at that as we go. So does anyone have any questions on the proposals? No. Not
Not
yet.
for 2025, no.
That gets done in like June. So we have time. Well, we tell them what we want. We
And
tell them how
We
much.
can
And
afford,
that
yeah.
price hasn't increased for 3 years, so I mean, I will want to say that it might not, it won't increase next year, but it seems like it's been pretty stable. But again, I don't know what it's gonna be. So Kevin does have a point. But like I said, that's kind of where we would hope to get a little bit on top of that from the sponsors, where we would do that and then maybe a little bit extra to guard against any unexpected increases.
Okay. I think then, does anyone have any other comments before we move on? Okay, if somebody has something, I mean, and they want to change something, that's fine, but then you need to figure out where you're gonna cut or what you're gonna do, and I do recognize that this is a 1-year problem. I mean, we don't anticipate this for 2026, but we are looking ahead, and I know you have one more slide for that. And I will then, well, before you finish that, I want to thank you. I want to thank all the department heads, the library. This has been a very tough budget, and we have never done this before to this extent. So I think it's a very good resolution, because staff is very important to us, and they keep us up and running, and there's no wages and benefits are not affected. And I think part of this proposal was to make sure we don't do that. So thank you, everyone, for your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you all. The last thing that we have for tonight, and I hope that this is a lot easier because I think that I have it pretty well put together, is the utility budgets. And the big thing for the utility budgets is what we're going to do with the capital projects, and trying to do what we can to blunt the increase that's going to be coming down the pipeline from the water utility rates. So the first suggestion, which has already been checked off, is approve the water rate case to be filed with the PSC. So we can kind of move on from the water utility portion of that and go towards the sewer utility. And so this is where I anticipate the most savings when it comes to the village utility customer. So right now, we are anticipating capital costs for the sewer utility to be in excess of $200,000. Part of that is their share of the dump truck. And then it is also talking about the road project where there is, as I had mentioned before, a bottleneck in the sanitary sewer on between 125 and 124 on Stark, where the size of the sewer main is too small for the amount of flow, because that gets flow all the way from 132 and then over. So we need to increase that size by about 2 inches to allow proper flow. So that is the reason why, because normally we don't have that much of an expense in the sewer. So again, this is another 1 year increase in the capital fund for the sewer because of that bottleneck that we, as far as I have talked to Craig and Ben Hyde, the engineer at Ari Smith, have determined that's the only time that we would need to do that. The rest of them are fine with regards to the size of them. So my proposal is I would have half of the capital expenditures go towards borrowing and half of them get hit on by the the sewer utility fund balance. Right now we have $941,000 in unrestricted fund balance for the sewer utility. This way we don't have to raise our rates, because as you can see here, if we financed it all by rates, the rate would go from $2.91 per thousand for the local charge to $4.09 per thousand, which would be $1.18 per thousand gallons of water used. So that is a very significant increase. That's probably a 50 to, I'm not super great at math, probably like a 50 to 60% increase. And I want to avoid that. I want to be conscious of our utility customers and what they're spending. So by doing what I'm proposing, we have no increase with regards to that. In addition to that, and where I think the savings are going to come in is MMSD's operating and maintenance budget for next year is decreasing by $50,000, or maybe a little bit more than that. So their rates to us are going to be lower. Their capital charge is going up by about $2,000, but overall it's still about $48,000 decrease in their overall assessment to the village. On top of that, I discovered that the way that we were calculating the capital charge for the sewer utility could be adjusted and made so that the actual fee for that could be decreased. And the decrease that I am looking for that item in particular would lower rates by about, I think it's about $1 per thousand. And with the lower charges from MMSD, I'm looking if we can keep our rate pretty constant. I think that it would, instead of that $1.18, it would only go up 8 cents per thousand with when you subtract out the capital. And then the decrease from the MMSD portion would actually cause the sewer rates to fall versus the water rates. So the water rates would increase, and again, that might not happen till after the first or second quarter. So we might not look at an increase in the water bill until July 1 of 2025, but the sewer rates could be decreased as a whole, because again, we have us and MMSD as a whole in 2025. And that again I estimate that if we, with the capital charge, we would be saving for the average household, it would be about, I want to say $12 for 12,000 gallons of usage. And again, that would increase with the lower MMSD charge. So again, $12, and then if you take into consideration the increase from the water bill, it would help offset a decent, I would say a decent chunk. Again, I don't know the exact number, but it would decrease the overall increase because of the overall utility bill. Adding to that, the stormwater budget, there's $41,865 that I'm looking to place onto the borrowing as well for that. And that is going to avoid a spike in the sewer charge of $3.51 per quarter if we included that. And so taking that off, actually allows the ability for us to even lower our ERU rate. So again, that's another area where we would be able to find that rate to decrease and help offset the water rate. So that is my plan that I'm proposing to you. Right now, we have about $60,000 in stormwater debt. We don't have any type of debt for the sewer utility, so the sanitary sewer. And that, again, that's just kind of my proposal that would make sure that we don't completely soak our residents next year.
Is that 941,000 fund balance in the
In
utility?
the sewer,
Is
in the
that
sewer utility.
Sewer
And
utility?
that's unrestricted
Is
that we
that
can
like-
spend it for anything.
Okay, but that seems like a lot, like really high to me.
Not really. We've had some pretty good hits on over the years on what it costs to operate it.
Okay.
The sanitary sewer, and I can show you this really quick.
And that's why it is at that number, just to deal with big fluctuations and.
Correct. And again, the risk of, as Trustee Benjamin mentioned, if there was a major Molded Rubber Plastics Cargill, one of the big users were to pack up and head on out, it would prevent all of a sudden a huge crisis from immediately happening.
Yeah.
So if you look here, the change in net position for the sewer utility has actually increased between $66,000 and $246,000 every year since 2021. So, and again, I think that we need to, use that money because again, without MMSD, the actual charges for the sewer utility would be only $266,000 without MMSD. So that right now is about more than 3 times our annual budget in the sewer utility as a net position. So, and if we were to spend that $100,000, the overall net position would get set back to where it was, between 2022 and 2023. So it'd basically be, falling back about a year. But overall, then, going forward, like I said, we wouldn't have a huge road project cost and we wouldn't have the dump truck cost. So that is that.
We had the influx in the sewer the last couple of years that we weren't expecting. So why not just pay the 101 or the 105 in cash versus doing half and half?
I'm proposing that just because I want to still ensure that we have a healthy fund balance. And I don't want to get too far ahead of, in front of our skis with that. I think that because we've never really done that, spent fund balance to finance that type of project. I don't want to get overly ambitious and, drop it by 200,000. And then all of a sudden in 2026, we have a problem where once somebody moves out, I want to be mindful of that. As we move forward. That's the reason why I was proposing a split to kind of satisfy both areas.
I like the idea of doing a split, but I with the water rate going up, it seems like we could almost absorb the blow of paying cash. The 105, 349, that's for the whole project, or is that half of the amount?
That's half.
Oh, the 105. Okay, so it's a $210,000 project.
210 if that that includes that utilities portion of the dump truck. So the dump truck, you could say this I allocated a little bit more to the sewer utility to try to free up stuff in the general fund. That's about 65,000. That would, you could say that portion is coming out of the fund balance. We're paying cash for that. And then we're borrowing for the actual road project costs, which are about 125. Not doing my math right here, but the road project costs are the rest of that on top of the 65,000.
So, let me just, and maybe I missed this, to fix the bottleneck is how much?
Off the top of my, sorry, give me one sec. I didn't put that in. I just said remainder for road project. Okay, great. I would have to check what Ben High sent me, and I'm not connected to the server, so I can't.
That's fine. So but the total with the bottleneck and the truck is 210,000?
Yes.
Could we,
That's just part of the, though, right? That's just the sewer part of it?
The
Just the
sewer part of the
sewer.
road project, correct. The rest of the road project is getting, correct, in the borrowed money fund.
Right, right,
Yep, yep.
okay. I want to make that clear.
Yep.
and the sewer fund covers if they have to rebuild the sewers. And I know we've talked that it's an unrestricted fund and we have more than usual in there. Would it make sense to maybe try to consider like a 75%
No,
versus 25 versus 25, 20, instead of 50/50, a 75/25?
That'd be up to the board. Like I said, that's what I propose is what I'm comfortable with. If you want me to go a different direction, you just have to tell me that.
I'd rather stay with what you feel comfortable with than try to expand on something one way or the other right now. Because the money that's in that account is there for a reason. And I know how fast it can be gone, for water, for just when the Mid-City did the 14-inch water pipe down here by the end, that was not a cheap date. I mean, they went down, what, 30, 40 feet? Oh, okay, I thought it was deeper than that, but still.
50/50 is fine. Any other issues or comments? Okay. Does that answer your question?
That answers my question. I will move forward with that. Yeah, that is the end of what I had.
Again, thank you very much for that. Is there any other questions for Ben before we go to adjourn? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On opposition, say nay. Motion passes. We're adjourned 7:51. Thank you.
And end stream and